Gerrymandering is the dark art of drawing district lines to maximize partisan advantage and to minimize the voice of your opponents. It's been with us for as long as we've had politicians who have controlled the maps. They do this by packing and cracking, either stuffing as many votes from the other side as they can into as few districts as possible so they can claim all the rest of the seats, or they spread them across as many districts as they can, as thinly as possible, to minimize their impact and render them voiceless. We redistrict every 10 years after the census for a good reason, to adjust for population shifts and changes, and ideally to ensure that every district is equal and representative. In reality, what this has done is it's created the opportunity for partisans to create maps that favor themselves behind closed doors, while relying on the fact that all of this line drawing talk is too technical and dull for most of us to pay attention to. Gerrymandering might have put you to sleep in civics class, but it is the dominant driver of the extremism, polarization, and lack of equal representation in our politics, and it has never been worse. You can just ask John Oliver. Big data, powerful computers, and dark money have been the accelerants that make today's gerrymanders more toxic, longer lasting, and more deeper partisan than at any time in our history. By most academic standards, the level of partisan bias in maps was either minimal or canceled out by both sides from the mid-60s through the 2001 process. It explodes in the redistricting process that follows the 2010 census. The partisan bias triples, according to what I think is the best academic study of this by Anthony McGann, Michael Latner, and others, and in a way that gives a huge advantage to the Republican Party. Gerrymandering helps explain the dramatic asymmetry in our politics. It also answers the question, how did we get here? How is it possible for such a closely divided country to be so dominated so thoroughly by one party at the federal level and at the state level? How our politics got so extreme, so polarizing? How we left Election Day 2016 with Republicans in complete control of Washington, but also 69 of 99 state legislative chambers, both houses in 35 states, and trifectas, both chambers of the state House and Senate, and also the governor in 25 states. Republicans, aided by this map-making software, by these all-knowing data sets, which can permanently tattoo district lines, bankrolled by a flood of anonymous dollars after Citizens United, well aware that they were endangered by demographic trends in a constantly changing America, plotted their return to power after Barack Obama's 2008 sweep through redistricting. How this happened is a story of two elections and how differently the Republicans and Democrats responded. 2008 brings Barack Obama a Democratic supermajority in the US Senate and a renewed Democratic majority in the US House. On television that night, the brightest minds in American politics from both sides talk about how changing demographics might now render the Republican Party a minority party in this country for a generation. It didn't exactly work that way. Democrats coasted on these good vibes for the next 2 years, certain that they led a coalition of the ascendant. Republicans got busy strategizing. They came up with an audacious plan. 2008 might have been historic, but savvy operatives recognized 2010 could matter more. What if Republicans studied the redistricting rules in every state, figured out how to lock the Democrats out in as many states as possible? This is what the map looked like in 2008. It was fairly split as far as the partisan compositions of state legislatures. This is what it looks like after the Republicans launched their plan. You don't have to take my word for it or these maps' words for it. Republicans announced what they were going to do. Karl Rove telegraphs a plan called REDMAP, an apt acronym for the Redistricting Majority Project in a March 2010 op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. It's worth close attention because it's so consequential and revealing, and also because the Democrats just didn't get their newspaper that day. Rove mentions the specific neighborhoods of small towns, Brushy Creek in Round Rock, Texas, Murraysville Township in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, as crucial to the down-ballot elections that could determine control of Congress for the next decade. He introduces a newly muscular organization called the Republican State Leadership Committee as its leader, and he lays out the focus. Win those 18 state legislative chambers that have 4 or fewer seats dividing the two parties that are crucial for redistricting. It's states we'll keep coming back to: Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina. Republican strategist Rove writes, are focused on 107 seats, state legislative seats in 16 states. By winning those seats, they have control of drawing district lines, he says, for nearly 190 congressional seats. His strategists execute this plan so perfectly that the only word he gets wrong is nearly. After Election Day 2010, Republicans would control the drawing of more than 190 seats, 193 to be exact, completely by themselves. Republicans would have the power to do just 44. You can see that that's a complete turnaround, and if you look at it in 1991, for example, it was 172 to 5 for the Democrats. So this completely turns around. You've got a savvy Republican strategist named Chris Jankowski who comes up with this idea. It's a really simple and elegant idea. It's amazing that no one had exactly hit on it this way before. You target these relatively inexpensive state legislative seats, you try to flip these chambers, you control the process in as many states as possible, and then you draw yourself friendly districts that lock in the gains in blue states, in purple states for the next 10 years. It's Moneyball. It's the old Brad Pitt, Michael Lewis book and movie applied to politics. In lots of ways, it's the biggest heist in modern American history. It's certainly the biggest bargain. The Republicans only spent $30 million on this. I mean, New Hampshire's Senate race in 2016 cost $100 million. But for $30 million, they were able to create a hammerlock on the House of Representatives for a decade and to build these huge supermajorities in blue states, in purple states for the next decade.